wow, what an amazing way to start our celebration of this Gay Pride Month event at our synagogue. It's kind of redundant. So we're very proud to participate in Gay Pride. I was trying to think of a different word, but I couldn't come up with it. So in my rabbinate, conservative movement has undergone dramatic changes. And I think of two in particular. One, of course, and it began really as I was entering the rabbinate, was the women's movement. So they would have equality to Jewish learning, Jewish ritual, Jewish life, Jewish leadership, lay leadership, clergy leadership. The battle was fought. It was won. The next battle was LGBTQ plus rights, right? That was the next battle. And I remember being in the room when rabbis were debating it, which, as you can imagine, the debate would be very, very strong. And they'd reach for sources and all. And then somebody who was having difficulty with the whole process, suddenly one rabbi turned to him and said, "Where's your chesed? Where's your compassion?" And suddenly it snapped in my mind. I got up and said, "What are you talking about? This is not compassion. This is justice. This is tzedek. You got the wrong word. It's the wrong conversation. You don't do this because you have compassion. You do this because it's the right thing to do. It's tzedek." And it says tzedek, tzedek tivos. Rabbi Versman says that every Friday night. That's what it means. Tzedek, justice, justice. And I realize one of the meanings of justice is sometimes we don't realize what is justice. So when that rabbi said, "Where's your compassion?" I said, "No, where's your sense of right and wrong? Where's your justice?" And of course, eventually, the justice of it gained the upper hand, and the conservative movement moved in that direction, so that almost it's a memory, it's a past memory. It's just not something that is questioned anymore in our movement, and that's something we can be very proud of. So as part of this celebration and this affirmation of the justice of what we've done within the liberal aspects of Judaism and what we've done as a country and as a society, we have a guest with us, and that's Tracey Labgold. And Tracey, just a little bit of background about her. She spent her career as an educator, a facilitator, and what she's dedicated to is creating what we call safe places. She had experienced bullying when she was in her childhood, and she decided to get involved in facilitating anti-bullying and diversity awareness workshops. The goal being to help others to understand the impacts of implicit biases. Tracey loves to engage people in meaningful conversations about the possibilities available when each of us is safe to show up as our full self. She has an MA from Teachers College of Columbia University. I went to Columbia too. I know we're both a little bit embarrassed by Columbia, but things are getting better, we hope. She taught high school English in New York. Whoa, that's not an easy task. In the New York City public schools and here in Florida. And she has chaired ADL's Florida's regional board for 4 years, taught Hebrew school at her shul for 13 years. So, Tracey and Michelle are part of our synagogue. So when Tracey and Michelle got together, when they're married, we got both of them. So we're enriched by their presence and by their commitment to our Jewish community and their commitment to tzedek, to that which is just and right, not only in our Jewish community, as Keshet is specifically for equality in Jewish life, but it's simply part of this rainbow coalition that seeks justice throughout our entire society, not only for LGBTQ+, but for all groups, so they can live their lives authentically as they were created. So, Tracey, we welcome you to share your thoughts with us in commemoration and celebration of this Pride Month.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi. As Rabbi said, my name is Tracey Labgold. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Florida Education and Training Manager for Keshet. Keshet is the Hebrew word for rainbow, as you might have heard when Annie was singing so beautifully just a moment ago. And our organization is a national nonprofit. We're a 20-year-old national nonprofit that work for the full equality of LGBTQ Jews and their family members in Jewish life. And we do that work in 4 ways. We have 4 program departments. We have a community mobilization department that mobilizes communities in favor and against legislation that impacts the LGBTQ community. We have Jews of Color programming, queer Jews of Color programming. We have a youth department that runs virtual and in-person programming for LGBTQ plus youth and their allies, ages 13 to 24. And I'm in the education and training department, and we work with Jewish organizations. I cover the whole state of Florida, so I work with Jewish organizations across the entire state, helping them improve their programming, policy, and culture. And we do all of our work through the lens of Jewish values. I'll speak just about one of them now, which is the idea of B'Tselem Elohim, the idea that we are all created in the image of God. And when I think of our one God who created each one of us turned out entirely different from anyone else around us. We're each our own unique being. Even identical twins are not the same person. And when I think about that, I think about the spark of divinity within each one of us as the thing that makes us separate, which makes us unique, which makes us special. And so when we can find that spark of divinity, that uniqueness in each one of us, and lift that up in each other, that, I think, is a really divine moment. So I'm here with you during Pride Month, and we observe Pride in June because it commemorates a revolt at the Stonewall Inn in New York City on June 28, 1969. The police would regularly raid the inn and other LGBTQ hangouts in New York and other places across the country. At Stonewall, mostly a group of trans women of color, but other LGBTQ folk as well, would dance and enjoy each other's company. Their existence at the time was illegal. This one particular night of June 28, 1969, when the police raided the bar, the patrons fought back. And this movement for LGBTQ plus equality began as a protest, and yet over time, it became a celebration. And I mention this specifically because yesterday, Tel Aviv celebrated Pride in a way different than every year before. Since 1993, Tel Aviv Pride has been a beacon of celebration and a party that in recent years typically attracts 250,000 people. But this year, it was observed instead as a hostage solidarity gathering, named the Pride and Hope Assembly. It was marked by hundreds of LGBTQ rainbow flags with expanded yellow stripes to show support for the hostages in Gaza and their families. And if you haven't seen one of these expanded yellow stripe pride flags after Shabbat, please Google them. They're really quite moving to see. The decision to replace the usual parade with a joint Pride and Hope event was made because of a collective desire to commemorate the events of October 7th and to acknowledge the ongoing war, while also fostering a sense of pride, hope, and freedom within the community. The gathering emphasized solidarity, resilience, and acceptance. As the world changes, the way that we observe Pride changes too. This year is particularly fraught with the rise in anti-Semitism that we have seen since October 7th. Earlier this week, in advance of Wilton Manor's Stonewall Pride on June 15th, I and representatives from other Jewish organizations that will be participating in Stonewall Pride met with the Wilton Manor's police chief and assistant chief to discuss security for LGBTQ plus Jews. The police chief and assistant chief shared with us that this was already front of mind for them. While we know that anti-Semitism is on the rise, both in the LGBTQ community and without, we know that, while sometimes loud, these hateful individuals are a minority. And the best way for us to overcome hate is to care for the well-being of one another. Speaking of the well-being of one another, this week's Parsha is Bamidbar, which means wilderness, which means in the wilderness. It is the first portion of the book Numbers, Bamidbar. And this book details the Israelites' journey from slavery to the Promised Land. They are in between, in transition, wandering. It is tiring and it is scary. It is a time when the Israelites really begin to figure out who they are. And one of the ways that they do this is by taking a census of all of the Israelite males over the age of 20. And each tribe is assigned a specific place in the camp around the tabernacle. When I read that only males over the age of 20 participate in the census, it leads me to wonder who counts and who doesn't, and why. When I learn that each tribe is assigned a specific place in the camp, I wonder about those who don't fit so easily into categories. Where do they assemble? How do they fit in? So as we reflect on our Torah portion this Pride Shabbat, I'm so grateful to be part of a synagogue that values the diversity of the human experience and celebrates all of us. I encourage us to reflect on what it means to count only some, to think about what it means to be the one who isn't counted, and how it feels when you don't have a spot in which to assemble. The world that I want all of us to feel proud about is one where each of us counts and is counted, where there is space for each of us to show up as our true and full selves and find belonging in our Jewish communities. May we enter the new week seeking ways to ensure that all voices are included to tell our story. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.
Wow. Thank you so much. Beautiful message. And the Tel Aviv, I'm glad you told us about that, because I don't think the news really covered it that much. It's good to hear that that's how they handle it. And probably the wisest thing for the Jewish community to do is count anyone who wants to be counted. We're not the biggest people in the face of the earth. We're not the largest people. Anyone who says, count me in, we should be counting them in. It'll make us stronger, and it will create a much better Jewish community. The better the Jewish community is, the more people want to count in. So thank you again. We're ready for...